Okay, section 3, sources of monopoly power. As equation 10.4 shows, the less elastic is demand curve. 10.4 was Lerner index. Lerner index is equal to price minus marginal cost over price, right? And we know this one is equal to minus 1 price elasticity of demand, okay? So the less elastic is demand curve, less elastic, so small numbers. The more monopoly power, small numbers, then this one is large numbers in absolute terms, right? So the more monopoly power a firm has. The ultimate determinant of monopoly power is therefore the firm's elasticity of demand, this one, right? Small numbers, then large numbers, okay? 3 factors determine a firm's elasticity of demand. Number 1, the elasticity of market demand. So determinant of this one is, number 1, price elasticity of market demand. Okay? Because the firm's own demand will be at least as elastic as market demand. So this one, right? Price elasticity of demand should be in absolute terms larger than this. Okay? So this one, price elasticity of market demand is minimum of individual elasticity. The elasticity of market demand limits the potential for monopoly power. The number of firms, second is number of firms in the market. If there are many firms, it is unlikely that any one firm will be able to affect price significantly. Number 1, number of firms increase, then one individual firm's monopoly power decrease, and vice versa, right? Number 3, the interaction among firms. Interactions among firms. Even if only 2 or 3 firms, so small numbers, are in the market, each firm will be unable to profitably raise price very much if the rivalry among them is aggressive. So rivalry matter, right? So small numbers, then market power, this one increase usually, right? But if 2 or few firms, rivalry between few firms very intense. Intense rivalry means some leading to decrease in monopoly power, right? That is point 3. So you get this. Each firm will be unable to raise its price very much if the rivalry among them is aggressive, with each firm trying to capture as much of the market as it can. Okay? Okay, there's 3 things. And from now on, we study 3 components in more detail. Number 1, the elasticity of market demand. If there is only one firm, we said that it's pure monopolist. Its demand curve is a market demand curve. If there is only one firm, then firm's demand curve is market demand curve. Same thing, right? In this case, the firm's degree of monopoly power depends completely on the elasticity of market demand. When the pure monopoly case, price elasticity demand is equal to price elasticity demand of market demand, simply talking, right? When several firms compete with one another, but there are several firms, then the elasticity of market demand sets a lower limit of the magnitude of the elasticity of demand for each firm. Several firms, then this one larger than this. This is a lower limit of individual price elasticity of demand. And a firm's elasticity depends on how the firm compete with one another. And the elasticity of market demand limits the potential monopoly power over individual producers. Because the demand for oil is fairly inelastic. We know demand for petroleum, right? It's inelastic. We already studied to this point, at least in the short run. OPEC could raise oil price far above marginal production costs during the 1970s and early 1980s. Right? OPEC, Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, right? They face some inelastic demand curve, so they can raise its price far above marginal cost. Okay? That we can see historical evidence for this. So during the 1970s and early 1980s, for example, 1970s, for example, first oil shock happened in 1972, 1973. Okay, so price of oil increased greatly in this period because OPEC countries raised its price. So worldwide recession happened and political turmoil happened all over the world. So in case of Korea, you know, 10월 유신 started at this as a result of this kind of recession. Early 1980s, the second oil shock happened in 1979 to 1979, I believe, right? Then what happened? Oil price increased gradually all over the world, and worldwide recession happened. And lots of political turmoil happened all over the world, including Korea. At that time, former President Park assassinated. Okay? Because the demand for such commodities as the commodities as coffee, cocoa, tin, and copper are much more elastic attempts by producers, right? The coffee, cocoa, tin, and copper are much more elastic than oil. So oil is featured by inelastic demand curve, but this one, coffee, cocoa, tin, and copper market featured by elastic demand curve. Elastic demand curve. So the cartelization of this kind of industry usually failed, quite differently from OPEC, right? Because the oil market is price inelastic, but coffee, cocoa, tin, and copper demand are price elastic, differently from oil. Okay, so their producers' efforts to cartelize this market and raise price have largely failed. Right, so you have to understand difference between two categories of market. In each case, the elasticity of market demand limits the potential monopoly power of individual producers. And the second component, number of firms. Explanation in more detail. Other things being equal, the monopoly power of each firm will fall as the number of firms increase. When only a few firms account for most of the sales in a market, we say that the market is highly concentrated. So market share of 2 or 3 to 5 firms, for example, over 90%, for example, right? So barrier to entry, condition that impedes entry by new competitors. Sometimes there are natural barriers to entry, right? And patents, copyrights, and license, this is also a work function, entry barriers. And economies of scale also function as entry barriers, right? Economies of scale, the larger firm producing production scale is very large, can produce that good with the cheaper cost, right? The bigger, the more efficient, right? Economies of scale may make it too costly for more than a few firms to supply the entire market. In some cases, economies of scale may be so large that it is most efficient for a single firm, a natural monopoly, to supply the entire market. Okay? So economies of scale means average cost decrease, right? Average cost decrease, that is average cost. Average cost decrease and decrease and decrease as you produce more, right? So entire market can be supplied by one firm. That is most efficient. For example, total production is this one, then price is near here. Average cost is very low. Can produce large of amount with a cheaper cost. But, for example, two identical firms supply this Q. Then what happens? Each one firm supply should be half of this one. Then average cost is here, right? So when two firms supply this amount of good, average cost greater, right? So cost inefficiency increase. In other words, that is the story of natural monopoly you studied repeatedly. And number 3, the interactions among firms. Firms might compete aggressively, undercutting one another's prices to capture more market share. Or they might not compete much. They might even collusion, you studied collusion, in violation of antitrust laws, agreeing to limit output and raise prices. Okay, other things being equal, monopoly power is small when firms compete aggressively, and is larger when they cooperate. So anyway, there are for given numbers of firms, they have two strategies, right? So compete aggressively or cooperation, right? If two same firms cooperate with each other, then each individual firm can charge a higher price than this case. If given numbers of firms compete with each other, then one firm's monopoly power is very low, right? So interaction among firms is a really important factor. Okay? Remember that a firm's monopoly power often changes over time as its operating conditions, market demand and cost, its behavior, and the behavior of its competitors also change. Monopoly power must therefore be thought of in a dynamic context. Furthermore, real or potential monopoly power in the short run can make an industry more competitive in the long run. Large short-run profit can induce new firms to enter an industry, thereby reducing monopoly power over the longer term. Okay, figure 10.10, the social cost of monopoly power. Deadweight loss from monopoly power. Okay, I'd like to. The shaded, so look at this. It's a Q, just Q, right? And demand curve is shaped like price is equal to A minus BQ like this, right? And demand curve is price curve. Also, we said that is average revenue curve, right? And marginal revenue curve is, for example, like this. And marginal cost curve is like this. Then profit maximization quantity happens where marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. In other words, Q star produced. Right? When Q star produced, equilibrium price should be P star. Price decided by price curve or average revenue curve. Like this. Right? And in our text here, and that is A area, B area, A, B, C, right? So think about consumer surplus. When the market is perfectly competitive, price equal to marginal cost, right? Price is equal to marginal cost. So production happen here. We said that is a competitive outcome, right? When equal to price equal to marginal cost, right? At competitive outcome, consumer surplus is equal to, that is consumer surplus and that is producer surplus, right? And this monopoly power, we said QM and PM, that is PC, competitive price. Then consumer surplus is, price is this one, so consumer surplus is this one, right? And producer surplus is less than price over marginal cost. So that is producer surplus. Now think about change in consumer surplus when we moving competitive to monopoly case, monopoly outcome, right? So in competitive case, consumer surplus is this one. Monopoly case, consumer surplus is this one, right? So change in consumer surplus is minus A plus B, right? When you're moving competitive to monopoly, okay? Also think about producer surplus. When competitive outcome of producer surplus is less than price over marginal cost, this area, right? But producer surplus in monopoly outcome is less than price over marginal cost, this one. So this one, this one. So change in producer surplus is this one, A, is increase when you're moving competitive to monopoly. But C, right? This part of consumer producer surplus disappeared because production decreased, right? So that kind of problem. So look at this. The shaded rectangle and triangle show the change in consumer and producer surplus when moving from competitive price and quantity PC and QC to a monopolist price and quantity PM and QM. Because of the higher price, consumer lose A plus B. So minus A, minus B, right? Because of higher price, also, and the producers gains A minus C, right? So if we sum everything, that is changing national welfare, right? Or our textbook said deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is what happened? Minus A plus A disappears. So minus B minus C, right? That is, or minus B plus C. That is deadweight loss of monopoly. Can you understand? That is monopoly. And now think about rent seeking. Rent seeking. Spending money in socially unproductive purpose to acquire, maintain, or exercise monopoly. Anyway, national welfare decrease or deadweight loss happened by B plus C. But from the perspective of producers, firms, they have incentive to try to change it to monopoly because anyway their benefit is A minus C. Their benefit increased by A minus C, right? So firms. So anyway, to secure monopoly instead of a competitive outcome, they have to persuade government or public servants, right? Government officers, for example. So to secure monopoly outcome, that is rent seeking, spending money in socially unproductive, for example, monopoly outcome to acquire, maintain, or exercise monopoly to get A minus C. So we would expect that the economic incentive to incur rent-seeking costs. So anyway, firms have to spend money to secure a monopoly. So maximum spending to exercise monopoly power cannot exceed A minus C, because that is a benefit from movement from competitive to monopoly, right? So that is A minus C. We would expect the economic incentive to incur rent-seeking costs to bear a direct relation to the gains from monopoly power. For example, rectangle A minus triangle C, A minus C, is a maximum rent-seeking spending from willing to pay, maximum willingness to pay, to exercise monopoly or rent seeking, right? And figure 10.11, again, the social cost of monopoly power. If left alone, a monopolist produce QF, right? Marginal cost equal to marginal revenue when produce QM, and price should be PM. When you produce QM, price is PM, okay? when the government imposes a price ceiling, in this case, price too expensive, so sometimes government intervene, right? So when the government imposes a price ceiling of P1 less than PM, then what happens? Now, then, demand curve or average revenue curve or price curve is changed like originally this one. So marginal revenue curve is like this. But now, this one, right? For example, price ceiling, government set maximum price. So in this case, price is PM, right? But government set maximum price cannot exceed PC, ceiling price, PC. Then new demand curve or average revenue curve or price curve is shaped like this, right? Then marginal revenue curve is originally this one, but now change it like this, like this. New marginal revenue curve is like this. In this case, new marginal revenue curve, marginal cost curve meet at this price. That is Q ceiling, right? Then price is this one. Price is this one, and quantity is this one. So production can increase from monopoly, and price decrease compared to monopoly price. Okay? That is explained in figure 11.10. For larger output level, the original average and marginal revenue curve apply. The new marginal revenue curve is therefore the dark purple line, which intersects the marginal cost at Q1 in our textbook. That is Q1, that is P1. P1 lower than PM, and Q1 is greater than QM. Okay, that is figure 10.11. And next slide. When price is lower than PC, now government lower its price again. For example, new price equal to PC, competitive price when marginal cost is equal to average cost. Then new marginal revenue curve shaped like this. Right? Marginal revenue curve shaped like this. And demand curve is shaped, average revenue curve is like this. Marginal revenue curve is like this. Then marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost meet at this point. So production increased to competitive level, QC, and price is equal to competitive price. Okay? That is explained here. When price is lower to PC, at the point where marginal cost intersects average revenue, output increases to its maximum QC, competitive level. This is output that would be produced by a competitive industry. Lowering price further to P3. Now, final case, price lowered again. Then this. Then what happens, for example, here. Then price, new price is like this. Demand curve, new demand curve is like this. That is, for example, P2. Right? Then demand curve is like this. Then new marginal revenue curve is from here and this one like this. Okay? Then what happened at this price ceiling by government? Marginal revenue curve intersects marginal cost curve at here. Okay? So production happened here. That is, for example, Q1, right? Q1. But demand is this one, isn't it? At this price, firms wants to produce Q1, right? So profit maximizing quantity is Q1. But consumers demand, average revenue is demand curve, right? So this one, that, for example, that is Q2. Demand, quantity demanded Q2, quantity supplied Q1. So demand larger than supply, so shortage happen, right? That is explained here. Lowering price further to P3 instead of P2, reduce output to Q2 or Q3, and causes a shortage, right? I already explained. And now we study natural monopoly, explained in figure 10.12. natural monopoly firm that natural monopoly firm that can produce the entire output of the market at a cost lower than what it would be if there were several firms. I already explained this. A firm is natural monopoly because it has economies of scale over its entire output range. Economies of scale means lowering average cost curve, marginal cost curve. Average cost decrease and decrease and decrease as you produce more. So cost also decrease and decrease, right? So in this figure 10.12, average cost and marginal cost curve. Okay? So in this equilibrium happen when marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. So production is QM, price is PM. If the price were regulated by government to be PC here, where marginal cost is equal to price or average revenue, right? Then price is equal to competitive price, and quantity should be equal to competitive supply, right? That happened. If price were regulated to be PC, the firm would lose money and go out of business. Then problem is, at this point, equilibrium point, PC and QC, we know that marginal cost is equal to average cost. But problem is average cost greater than average revenue or price, right? At this point, price or average revenue smaller than marginal cost, right? Because this one is equal to marginal, so average cost. Average cost, right? So this point, when marginal cost is equal to average revenue is equal to marginal cost, this happens. That means average cost greater than price. Then negative profit is needed. Why? Profit is equal to price minus average cost Q. I already explained. Here, average cost greater than price at QC, at PC. So negative profit. So no firm wants to produce when price regulated to be PC. When this natural monopoly case, setting the price at PR is the largest possible output consistent with the firms remaining in business. Excess profit is equal to zero. Then, so usually in that case, government introduce average cost pricing. Average cost. So government said this one, right? This kind of thing. Average cost, not here, different graph, right? So, and PR in figure 10.12. Then price equal to average cost. Average cost pricing means charge price, government regulated price equal to average cost. Then profit is equal to zero. But firm have no reason to leave the market. Okay, that is figure 10.12. And finally, so I'd like to explain a little more about this government regulation of price in practice. That is slide number 36. So regulation in practice. The regulation of a monopoly is sometimes based on the rate of return that it earns on its capital. The regulatory agency determines an allowed price so that this rate of return is, in some sense, competitive or fair. Rate of return regulation. Maximum price allowed by a regulatory agency is based on the expected rate of return that a firm will earn. Although it is a key element in determining the firm's rate of return, a firm's capital stock is difficult to value. So, regulatory lag is a term associated with delays in changing regulated price. Another approach to regulation is setting price caps based on firm's variable cost. A price cap can allow for more flexibility. For example, a firm could raise its price each year without having approval from the regulatory agency by an amount equal to actual rate of inflation minus expected productivity growth. Actually, this is extension of earlier slide, right? Not so important. This slide is not so important. Anyway, I'd like to summarize section 4, the social cost of monopoly power. So deadweight loss happen in the case of monopoly. So this one, deadweight loss happen, or national welfare decrease, minus B plus C. Because of this, monopoly is not so good from the perspective of society. Okay? So government have an incentive to intervene at the market to lower its price and produce more production, to increase production. Okay? And I'd like to also emphasize natural monopoly case. Natural monopoly case, right? So average cost pricing, regulation by government. Okay, in this case, price equal to average cost, so zero profit happen. But compared to monopoly case, price lower than PM, monopoly price, and production is greater than QC. So this kind of efforts, the target of this kind of efforts is to reducing this deadweight loss arising from monopoly. Okay, so then we go next section.